So I'm Risa Hoag, and my company is GMG Public Relations, and I want to welcome you to Insight Network. And this was really something that I created quickly, really on the fly, when we all got hit with this crisis mode that we're in and dealing with the virus. And it's a challenging time for everybody, and my goal is really to bring some information to people, hopefully bring some laughter to people as well, and some good solid information that people can use, through this crisis, but also going forward beyond that. So hopefully we'll all learn together. So I want to bring on my colleague and my friend, Patricia Stark. And so let me bring her in. Hello, Patricia.
Hello. Did you just see me blotting my forehead?
No.
Oh, good. Well, I'm thinking to myself, well, I better not be shiny, and let me do that. And then there you are, popped up on me. How are you?
I'm good. I am, it says we're live on Facebook, so I'm going to assume, because I don't see it on my iPad, and that's the challenges of modern technology. So I'll just assume that we are live on.
I think we are, because I think I'm kind of looking down. That's why I was distracted. I was taking a sneak peek to see where we were at.
Oh, good. All right. It's not, for whatever reason, coming up for me, but as long as you see us, that's terrific. So, everybody, I want to introduce you to Patricia Stark. And I think I was trying to think back on when we met initially and whether it was RBWN or not.
I think it was.
Yeah, Rockland Business Women's Network. So we honored Patricia at one of our, it may have been the first breakfast that we did, the Women of Achievement breakfast. And we sort of talked and chatted a bit after that, and we've done some other things together. And I've been following your career and all the exciting and fun things that you're doing, and all the ways that you help people, which is really wonderful. So for those who and I can't imagine there's anybody watching who doesn't know you, but for those who may not know you, you have a company right now. I mean, you have your communications firm, but also confidence.com, which you can explain to people further into the presentation here. And but you also do public speaking training. I love that you do, you're a certified body language specialist, which is awesome. And then some of your clients, NASCAR, Turner Broadcasting, ESPN, Condé Nast, E-News, Smithsonian, NASA TV, so many wonderful clients. And I know that you've also worked with kids. I was actually with you at the dinner at St. Thomas Aquinas just recently, where you were honored as well by our mutual friend, Bill Madden.
Yes, Bill's great. And, he had nominated me for the Hall of Fame, and I appreciated that so much. And I love STAC. I had gone there, and then I was an adjunct professor there, and it was just such a wonderful honor. I've been going back there to speak for over 20 years, so it was great, and it was great to see you there as well.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful night. My friends Kevin Kellner and Jordan Baker also were honored for the scholarship that they did there. That was a glorious night. I mean, it really was.
Fantastic. They did
it really was.
It was January 24th. So
I think that was the last gala, like before, before this craziness, it was the last time of really seeing anybody. All right, so everybody now is on Zoom, for people who may have never heard of it. I've been using it for, I guess, over a year, but on the one-to-one sort of limited basis. And, but now all of a sudden it was quick, get a subscription, and, you got to have 30 people on a meeting, and we all kind of got thrown into it. I've already had 2 this morning. One was 17 of us, and one was 100 of us.
Wow.
And it was really fun to see the differences as I was sort of thinking about today's conversation, to see the differences in people's use of it. And I thought, wow, we can help a lot of people with this, because there were people literally sitting in the dark. There were people who weren't even sure where the mute button was or not, how to frame themselves in the back. And it took me a couple hours to get this all set up, by the way.
Make sure we weren't seeing the words backwards, right?
Yes, and we were seeing the words backwards, and I've downloaded software and everything. But I want to talk. Let's start with some obvious things. Unless you have anything you want to say first before we jump right in.
Well, I just want to say that I hope everybody out there watching is healthy and safe and well during this unprecedented time. It's definitely a stressful time and an anxiety-inducing time for everyone. But as regarding working in front of the camera, and whether it's Zoom or Skype or whatever it may be, this is actually the best time, I think, to dip into this or have to be kind of forced into this world, because frankly, I think that people's priorities and the things that they're concerned about and worried about are so much greater than how you look and sound in front of the camera right now. Although we're here because obviously we know that's important. You want to be able to put your best foot forward when we are communicating this way. But if there's ever a time where people would be more forgiving on how you're looking and coming across, that time is now. So if this is your time to learn to find your place and your confidence in front of the camera on Zoom or Skype or whatever the situation may be, as far as what your company uses or whatever your educational resources, whatever it may be, I think that this is a great time to work through those growing pains and work out those kinks.
Yeah, that's so very true. There's people who are on, on there are being forgiven for anything. I'm thinking back to the broadcaster who had his kids running in the back, and how mortified he was about it. And now it's like, oh, whatever, so it's definitely, the rules are far more relaxed than they might have been. But I think everybody also wants to feel a sense, like, as you well know, of confidence, yes. That they can be on camera and feel as though they're presenting their best foot forward. And we don't know how long this will be. And even if it ends sooner rather than later, it might become a little bit of the new norm, that you can do these meetings this way and maybe not have to travel as much. So you want to have your best face, your best foot, your best background, in mind when you do it.
You bring up a really good point, because this is going to set a precedent. People, companies, everyone's going to see how this starts to work and how it's efficient and how it saves time and money. And I think that you will see a lot more of this being used even after we get through all of this.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely true. I've heard from a few people already saying that they feel very productive because, that travel time and all of that has been sort of cut out. So I think it will become a bit of more normal, as we move forward from this.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about framing yourself?
Yeah. Before I talk about framing ourselves, which is obviously very important because that's what we're seeing, is I just wanted to mention when you used a very key word before about presenting ourselves. And when I work with people, whether it's for public speaking training or media training or training like this, one of the most important things I try to get across is that I don't think that anyone likes to be presented at. We all like to have a conversation and feel like someone's talking with us on a human one-to-one basis. So I feel like that word presentation should be stricken from our language, because I think that we should all approach it like a human conversation. Because when I first put people on camera many times or get them up and record them for public speaking, even if they're not directly into the camera, but I'm videotaping them so that I can play back and show some of their public speaking habits or distracting habits or whatever we may want to work on. Everyone tends to have this thing happen where they get all formal on me. And you'll see it even if you've ever seen somebody get up to speak at a wedding or somebody that doesn't normally have to speak in public. Everybody tends to get like all buttoned up and official. And where we need to be professional to a certain degree, television has always been considered an intimate medium. And even though we're on a laptop right now or an iPhone or whatever we're digesting it from, it really kind of falls under that same category of TV on camera. And it is, look at how close up we are. I mean, we want to feel like we're right there one-on-one across from somebody, either having a cup of coffee or discussing something. So trying to keep that idea of it's a one-on-one conversation. And as you mentioned earlier today, you were on with a few people and then you were on with 100 people. But when everybody is making that eye contact and listening to you, everyone wants to feel like you're having a conversation just with them. Because think about even the way that you watch news or you watch television. This is why people see people they don't know that are broadcasters in the mall or somewhere and walk up to them and start talking to them because you feel like you have this personal relationship with them. So we want to always make sure that we're conversational and that we're always having a one-on-one conversation, no matter how many people may be watching. I do these continuing medical education broadcasts for a company that's based out of New Jersey. Sometimes we travel around the country to different studios, and other times we're actually in their facility in New Jersey. And they have this really cool new technology called Pando. It's a proprietary technology of theirs, where I will stand in a room and I'll talk to a camera, but then behind me, I could have 60, 120 people behind me on these video walls. And it's everybody in little boxes, kind of like Zoom or Skype, like we're doing right now, but it's everybody from all around the country, different locations around the country. And I'm always fascinated when I'm doing that to watch who's just hanging out, who's super uber too casual and falling asleep or chugging a drink, or unfortunately, you know, doing some body maintenance that they're forgetting they're in front of the camera, or others that are getting it, you know, more framed right and doing things right. But really, again, what it comes down to is just, this is replacing us being in person. So those same great people skills, that same connection, that authenticity, that genuineness, all of those things should still be there. We shouldn't sanitize it. We shouldn't get it all official and all buttoned up just because we are presenting in front of the camera.
Yeah, it's interesting because this morning in the second meeting where we had 100 of us, these are people that I had some knowledge of, some more than others, obviously, but some who I had never met. And because you're literally close up like this now, you know, I was able to really click on and see people and say, oh, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. So you really are, you know, up close and personal with people in a way that maybe even in public, you don't get this close, you know, to people.
Especially now.
Yeah, so it's interesting to, you know, think about it in that light, that you are, you know, like you said, and there's a balance, right? So there's a balance between, like you said, being too formal and, you know, official, but also being professional and friendly. So it is very much like a conversation that you would have with somebody that you'd meet at coffee, you know, but it's, you know, it's in an environment that people are just now starting to think about and get used to.
Yeah, and it comes down to knowing who your audience is. So if you're someone who was in a company there where it was business casual, then dress business casual. But if you're in a company where it's more suited out and more a higher end professional as far as the wardrobe goes, you still want to dress for the part of who your audience is and what the situation might be like. You know, most of my last couple of weeks, I've only had to be on the phone with clients or dealing through email and taking care of family issues and things like that. So I've pretty much existed in a baseball cap and a ponytail, no makeup, and probably my favorite black sweats and sweatshirt, right? So this morning, my 16-year-old son sees me come, you know, running through the kitchen, getting prepared. And he's like, "You're getting dressed up for this thing?"
I got the same thing this morning.
Yes, right. I was like, yes, because not only do I want to feel good and put my best foot forward and feel like I'm in work mode, I think we also dress out of respect for those that we're going to be in front of. So I wanted people to know that I'm here trying to show up to give my best 300% for them today as well. So
Right.
I think, again, you know, I always tell people, especially when they're working in front of the camera for television or for media, that, you know, you can do your hair and makeup, do your wardrobe, get everything in place, get everything ready, set, go, so that you're ready when you stand in front of that lens. But once you get in front of that lens, there's nothing you can change about any of that. So now you got to let it go,
Right.
forget about yourself, forget about how you look and sound and feel, and just in this time frame, just connect and make the person that you're talking to, the audience, the viewer, make them be your priority. As far as my sole focus is now, how do I help bring value and be of service and give something to the people that are watching? And it's really, truly forgetting yourself. And once you get into that mode, because then that also, for people who get nervous and it's not their comfort zone, that can also take a lot of pressure off yourself, learning and being able to let go of that and forgetting yourself.
Yeah, and I think that helps the other person relax as well, because somebody is always going to be a little bit more comfortable than somebody else, and so if that person is more relaxed, it helps the person on the other side of the camera be more relaxed as well. Yeah, I got the same thing this morning. You're all dressed up. Where are you going? I said, no, I'm on camera all day today. So,
I mean, it made me feel human again. I was like, woo, I get to get myself together today.
Yeah, I actually saw, I got an ad in my email from one of the clothing companies that said, you know, how how to dress for business today, and it was like great tops and, you know, sweats or, you know, yoga pants on the bottom. You know, we get to all kind of wear whatever we want on the bottom now, but, you know, sort of have that nice appearance on top. So it's
I get that, and there is definitely some value to that, and I have done that, but it's funny that you bring that up because I actually thought to myself when I got dressed this morning, I put nice, real, solid work shoes on because I haven't been in them, and I wanted to feel grounded from the floor up. And it just made me feel like more sturdy and secure. But yeah, I mean, even that used to be the joke about judges, that we never knew what they were doing behind the desk. You know, they had their judge robe on and God knows what underneath there.
Right. Well, for the record, I'm barefoot and
And that's okay.
and I'm good with that. So, and no one needs to see them. So, all right. So do you want to talk a little bit about framing?
Yeah. So let's get into the framing of things now.
And you can use me, like we can play, I'll play with my camera. And
well, you know, I have the fortunate background of working in television for over 30 years now. And in my first job at TKR Cable, Channel 8 in Rockland, which later became Cablevision.
Yeah.
When we were working in front of the camera, you know, we got to also work in every other aspect because it wasn't a union shop, it was local television. So I learned how to work television cameras and edit and light and do all of those things. So that's where I first learned how to frame a shot. And it's served me well over the years, and I'll share some of the main things with you right now. So as you can see, this is called Headroom. I don't want to, you know, have it cutting off my head. I don't want to look like I'm sinking down into the shot. I want to have just a little bit of about a half an inch of a little breathing room, so it doesn't look like my head again is either sinking or trying to bust out of the shot.
And there's different things with you know, some people will have a phone, some people will have a laptop. So all of that is going to vary. I have my camera on a tripod sitting right in front of me, which is not really how I normally do it, but I wanted to seem like I was conversing with you. So everybody will have to adjust for that, but go ahead.
Yeah, so when you're framing your shot, if there's a way that you can get into Zoom or Skype or anything ahead of time so that you can have access to what you're looking at before you go live or to tape. So for instance, when I used to do it with Skype, I would just pretend that I was calling a video call on a friend who I knew didn't do video calls, and I could watch and frame myself that way. With Zoom, it's great. You know, it lets you adjust, it lets you look before you engage your camera. So that's all stuff you can do well ahead of time. And then you place your lighting and those other things. So as far as the shot goes, so this would be considered a close-up, you know, not super close, but a medium close-up would be more here, and then of course a long shot would be back further, but you know, about the same. You want to make sure that you've got it equal on both sides, so that this and this, so you're centered in the screen really. And then as far as with a laptop or a cell phone or anything that you're shooting on goes, you really want it to be eye level. So right now I have my laptop on this little cute little suitcase thing that it's like this old fashioned, I love Victorian decor, and I have these really cool boxes that I collect. So I know that this is like my Zoom or my Skype box because it's the perfect level to get my little camera there, eye level. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be looking up to it, because then you look like a Lilliputian and you're sinking down again. And you don't want to look down into it because it looks foreboding, it looks like you're looming, and after, you know, maybe 30, you know, gravity is not kind and everything pulls down. So that is an issue. So
and that's a really big issue. I mean, this morning was just every angle, every, you know, unattractive angle of, you know, from the laptops here, and you know, you could, it's almost disconcerting because you really can't see the person. You're kind of focused on, could you move your camera down, and it's sort of distracting. So I think your tip about setting it up in advance and taking a look at your own background and framing is a good one.
Yeah. And for those people who are just like, I don't want to be bothered with that, or that just seems like so much effort, it shouldn't really matter because of how I look and things like that. But it does, you know, it's just easier for everybody to communicate and have that eye contact and not have distractions when your shot is framed right. It's good for everyone. And then it also takes into account where you're going to place your lighting. So the way that I have this propped up right now, sometimes I use box soft lights that I've gotten at like B&H.com, but I think they're closed down right now. But I got a ring light that I use for training, and you can also put a camera through there if you wanted to. It's just a great light that I got on Amazon. I invested in a little bit of a better one, but now now I know where to set that so that it comes and it hits me just on. And a little mention about lighting. So in lighting in studios, when people light you from above, it can start looking weird. You can look like you're having a mustache. Your eyelashes can start to cause shadows under your eyes. It'll make your eyes look dark. So you always want the lighting to either be equal or just a little bit lower, shooting up at you. And again, if you're someone who's older and we start to get the little turkey neck and we get these things, you know, in broadcasting, there's always what's called a beauty light. So in addition to the key lighting, there's a light down below that's shooting up, that's causing all of this to open up. So, you know, all of these things are so important because we're shooting with this fisheye lens in a very unnatural setting. So you have to compensate for that with the best lighting possible, and makeup and powder and those things, because otherwise you could look washed out. You know, it's just, you want to know that you have to take those extra steps because you're working in an unnatural environment, especially when lighting gets involved.
Yeah. So when we first came on before, I thought, oh, your lighting is literally perfect. Your face is perfectly lit. You have great color. It's really well done. And I can having had that morning show for a while, I know with the ring light and all of that. So I'm a little bit challenged in my office because I've got overhead lighting that's very, you know, very bright and coming in. I've got a window over here which really doesn't have a shade, and then I've got this other light that's sort of a task light that I sort of, you know, moved around here. But yeah, so the lighting thing is definitely an issue, but I almost feel like you're better having more light than less light. I mean, there were people this morning who were literally, you know, in the dark.
Yeah, it depends on where the lighting is placed. Like if you have overhead lighting, you know, you could dim it down if possible, or sometimes just shut it off if it's right over your head, glowing too much, and then you use the key light that's in front of you. So the main lights are your key lights. So and yes, as far as windows go, you can see I have one, it's over this way, but it's not causing lighting to come in on me. I'm not backlit. It's kind of off to the side, so it's not affecting me. So what I would never do is I'd never have the windows behind me, because then you're going to be backlit and that will make you look darker. And you also want to be conscious of, if you're not doing enough lighting coming forward, then what's going to happen is you're going to get lighting from your laptop or your monitor, which can sometimes look green, can look eerie, all of those things. That's right. Yes.
Okay. All right. So light. So I went to look for my ring light really quick and did not find it. So I'm gonna seek that out and but and then just in terms of background, so I did this sign in preparation for this morning, because what I've had before this, I didn't have this in the background, and I realized that I ride horses, so all my ribbons were up around my wall, which was very colorful, but it wasn't exactly, you know, the right thing. And I've got yellow walls, and I've got my curtain over there that hides my supplies and things. So it's a little bit of a challenging environment. So I brought my banner out, which is another whole story. I brought my banner out so that at least it sort of had my GMG in there. I don't know that I'll keep it after this. I kind of wanted to try it and see, you know, how it went. There is, through Zoom, you do have the ability, and I couldn't show it, but it's going to be really bad. So I'm just telling everybody that in advance.
Oh, like backgrounds that you can insert?
Yeah. So if you have a green screen, what they call a green screen, so a solid background, which you can get on Amazon too, you have a solid background, you can do this better. But you have the ability, you can say, to add backgrounds and things. Yeah. But it sort of tries to seek out, you know, it needs a solid color, basically.
Right. And you have to be careful with holes in your hair, because then you'll get
eyes.
Blotches in your eyes.
Yeah.
Wardrobe you're wearing, that could be, yes. So I think they need to perfect that a little bit. And then you have to make sure that the green background that you're using, that's lit well too, so that it keys correctly. So it's a little bit involved, but I think that they're going to be improving that. And I also heard somebody on the Today Show yesterday was talking about, I think it was westelm.com or something, where you can also download, right? But the main thing is like what you did, I think works well, because you're more lit in the center. So the curtain that's behind you, at least that's not competing with your face. The sign, that could be a little bit white, but it's not competing. Like, you're still lit well. So I think the great rule of thumb is less is more, whatever is clean. Like, I made sure that I didn't have this clock growing out of the top of my head. So I just
I have a little
right? Yeah, it almost looked like a crown at first. I was like, oh yeah, no, we don't want that happening. So I just kind of pushed that out of the way.
Yeah.
I've done Zoom and stuff here before, so I knew it was pretty much of a cleanest background in my office, and you can't see any of my mess this way here right now because it's just that time. But yeah, so the main thing is less is more. I'd rather see just a blanker background, but you also just don't want it to be so blown out by the light that's so light and brighter than you, because then the lens of the camera or the monitor, I mean, the laptop is like an iris. So the iris in a human eye will expand when things get dark and it will shut down when things get light. So if there's so much blown out light around you or backlighting, like we talked about earlier, it's going to shut down and you're going to look darker. So we don't want to have that happen. So less is more. You don't want to look like things are growing out of your shoulders, growing out of your head. You don't want a random cat I've seen when I've been on there jump animals, things like that.
Right.
So yeah, just nice, framed, as clean as you can, as best lighting that you can, and just less is more. It's a little bit busy, but it's my office and I know that it looks like that. And I've actually been enjoying seeing some personal spaces of some of the broadcasters on air lately, which I think people are too. But again, just less is more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is fun to see people's backgrounds. And my office is in the basement of my home, which it's been for 30 years. Luckily, I have a nice big window because of the way our land slopes down. So I don't feel like I'm in a basement. But it's been kind of fun to let people, hey, here's my office,
Right.
But yeah, I think your points are really well taken. Less is more. Work on your lighting ahead. I'm going to even do more now, find my ring light and all of that. And again, it's not that it has to be perfect, but you just want to feel that, that you're framed well, that you are not being people aren't being distracted by what's behind your head or whatever. So I think those are all
clean and free of distractions. I think those are the two main things. And one thing as I'm talking to you that I wanted to bring up as I'm realizing that I'm talking to when I'm talking about the lens is people struggle with where to look.
Yeah.
Until some genius, and I hope they're working on it, works out a way to put that little pinhole where the camera is directly into the center of our screen, we are having this struggling act between I want to look at the person I'm talking to, but then I'm not making eye contact with you.
Right.
So if you notice, I'm really trying hard to listen to you because I want you to know I'm listening. So I'm trying to look only into my pinhole lens there. But then every once in a while I'll look down at you and I'll look at things but when I'm doing the talking, I really want to make solid, nice eye contact with that lens so that you feel like you're making great eye contact with me when you're listening to me. So it's a blend between, going back and forth. And, even if we were in person, we don't want to just be constantly staring because then it's like this awkward stalker stare. So it's normal to kind of look around and look at someone's chin, look at their eyebrows. We communicate with our face. And, so in addition to that great eye contact with the lens, it's also good to let people know that they have your full attention and that I'm fully in the moment here. So I want to avoid looking around at other people in the room, looking around for no reason, like where am I looking? Who's there? There's no reason. I should be here with you 100% right now. So those are all things that we want to make sure that we are really paying attention to. And also the fact that we communicate with our face. And it's super important to have the facial expressions that match your intention, that match your emotions. Make sure that you're expressing yourself and that you are invested in this with some emotion. I always say, don't enter the monotone zone. You don't want your voice, your facial expressions, or your body language to be completely one tone, because that's not how we communicate. There's been studies that have shown that even people who are blind since birth use those same facial expressions to express all of those emotions that we have in common, even though they've never witnessed them. So we're hardwired to communicate with our facial expressions. So we want to make sure that when we look into that camera, that doesn't go out the window. Because usually when I train people for being on camera the first time, that's the first thing that goes. They just get all serious or they're focused on their message and they completely get devoid of any facial expression.
Yeah, it's the camera thing is definitely challenging because when I look like I'm looking off to the side, it's because I'm looking at your face on my screen.
It depends on where you have that box then.
Right. So so now I have the box, and this is fun because you can see this really in real time here. So I now have the the lens right over your face.
And that's what mine has been, yeah.
So I'm looking at you, but it's, you know, if I'm looking at you, really, I'm looking like this. So you see the difference versus now I'm looking directly into the lens. And I think as a broadcaster, you have vast experience in that over others because you're used to looking into a black hole, which is your camera. And for those who have done any kind of interviews or videos for their own businesses, what happens usually when you do those is the camera's here, someone's holding the camera,
And you
but
want to
they're
look at that.
asking you to look here.
Right.
And talk so that the conversation is happening here and not to look into the camera.
Oh,
so
depending on how they're using it. Yes, yes.
yeah,
yes.
so the POV. So now you're trying to, you know, look at the camera, but when I do that, I'm not really seeing you. So it is a very, very tricky thing to get used to, even for, you know, I mean, I'm not brand new at this, and it's still very tricky for me because I want to look right at you. Which is over there.
And I totally get that. And that's why
Yeah.
it needs to be a blend between the two. But I think if you just always practice and remember, if eye contact changes everything, well, that's how we connect as human beings. So if I really want to commit to that, I have to get used to looking into that little lens and making that be the eyes of my viewer. And
Yeah.
even if I didn't see you on video right now and I'm doing that for broadcasting and I've got no video visual, I mean, sometimes you'll have a monitor off to the side, which you don't want to look at once you go live or go to tape. But as I'm looking, I have to say to myself, I need to picture that person in my mind's eye the way I would if I was on the telephone with somebody. You know, think about how many times you've been on the phone with somebody and you have not known what they look like. You have to create this image in your mind so that you have a normal human conversation. And then you see them in person, you're like, oh, I didn't expect them to look like that. That's because we're actually all already good at this. So
Yeah,
let's use those same skills that you would have used over the phone, knowing that there's another human being on the other end of that. And it's your job to kind of make that fisheye lens or that hunk of metal camera or whatever is be the human being that you're picturing in your mind.
And I think also, as you know, as people are doing this for meetings, for example, so right now we are trying to have a one-on-one conversation and demonstrate a lot of this, but you know, during the day when I'm talking to people, I'm also on my laptop and I'm doing this and I'm talking and I'm you know, doing my own thing over here. So like you said, it's you know, we're kind of giving the extreme example here, but there obviously you can move around and you can
Oh, sure.
do other things and be comfortable in your own environment.
Totally.
All right, should we talk about body language? Or I love that you're a body language expert. Like I want to do a whole session maybe for Rockland Business Women's Network on
Oh, it was fascinating. You know, I had one, this was in the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. It was Thanksgiving. And I stumbled across a documentary called The Secrets of Body Language on the History Channel. And I was glued to the television and feverishly writing notes. And my husband comes in, I'm on the floor in the bedroom watching the television with all of my pens and paper. And he comes in and he looks at me and goes, what are you doing? You're working on Thanksgiving? And I was like, no, this is fascinating. I can't take enough notes because I was already doing this to a certain degree based on what I was seeing people on camera and when I would put them on there for public speaking and seeing what things looked good and what things could have been stronger and what things were awkward or whatever. So I was just fascinated by this. So I tracked down one of the experts that were featured on this down in Washington, D.C. And lo and behold, found out that they were offering this 90-hour intensive. I signed up, got on a train and headed down there and spent over a week down in DC. And we were literally going through video frames of every serial killer and lying politician and doping athlete and all these people to even look at micro expressions. And it, not just body language, it was facial expression, it was statement analysis, all of these different things. And it was just amazing. And the whole thing culminated with us having to put together a whole training PowerPoint presentation on the final day of being the training, that, you know, the trainer of the body language to get our certification. So it was fascinating. It was wonderful. But when I tell people this, they suddenly start to not know what to do. They're thinking I'm analyzing them or something.
I mean, some of them are the, you know, some of the ones that we know just from watching TV and hearing people is, you know, you don't want to have your arms all crossed and all, you know, hunkered down. You want to be open. My big one is just always, I'm a big smiler. Like I want to smile. Because I feel like it relaxes people. And, you know, the more you can smile, that's like, that's my biggest one, smiling.
Yes,
But what do we need to know? I mean, it's interesting. What do we need to know on camera?
I think mainly that you don't want to be too expressive with your hands up into the frame or going like this, because this is very distracting, right? I want to be able to move and
Right.
depending on what my shot is. So if I'm framed like this, I want to be able to use my gestures, because then what does it do? It makes my shoulders look relaxed. I'm human. I'm not all stiff. I'm not all locked into place in a nervous wreck. So you want to be able to express yourself. And then if I wanted to give an example and said the fish was this big, that's okay, because I'm not living up in the frame. And then the other thing is just, not kind of rocking, not spinning in your chair, not being a moving target, because that's really hard for people to sit and watch. And if you are being framed by a camera guy, they're going to hate you if you are a moving target and a greased pig that they're trying to catch, right? And you also want to know that anytime that you're doing a lot of that moving in motion, that can read as being nervous. So even if you are nervous, if you can just kind of be a little bit still and try to stay within the frame, and you can squeeze your toes till the cows come home if you want to relieve some nervous tension. Nobody will see that. I can even tell people to do that on stage, because we won't see that in closed-toed shoes. And then just to make sure you're watching your posture, because posture is really our first indicator of being comfortable and being confident. And because just think about when you yell at someone, maybe a child or something, think about what's the first thing they do. They implode. They get their shoulders get rolled down. So a lot of times when I work with, I worked with some women executives recently. One of them was a very tall woman, and she had this habit that she didn't even know, where she was constantly rolling her shoulders down and minimizing herself to get down to a shorter level, because she felt tall over people. And on camera, it looked absolutely horrible. And we had to work on that so that she would stand up straight and look more confident. So it's just not being so stiff and locked into place, but watching how you're sitting in a chair, that like your chair isn't sucking you in, and that it's got like such a low bottom that you're looking frumpy, and then leaning too far into the frame that you're screwing up your headroom that we talked about earlier. So just, I mean, even there was a great TED talk by Amy Cuddy that many of people have seen on body language, where she talks about how when you're up and you're open and you're feeling dynamic and tall, that helps with your stress hormones. It lowers your cortisol and raises your testosterone. And this can happen in just 2 minutes. And this has been disputed, but I found that it does work this way. So just making sure also, before you enter a situation, how have you been using your body? Have you been using your body in a powerful way, or have you been minimizing yourself and crouched down and looking at your resume or your phone, or what have you been doing right beforehand? So it's always good to kind of stretch out and feel like you're using your space even before getting into a communication situation.
I like this too, because there's going to be a lot of people, hopefully not a lot, but there'll be people who will have to do this for interviews, for job interviews. So not just meetings, but job interviews. And so that, I think, again, your point really well taken about not seeming too nervous or jumpy or, frumpy, like you said, and thinking about it from a power perspective, if you will, or empowering for yourself kind of perspective. How do I look and feel my best, on camera? And I do shift a lot when I'm, normally talking to people. I'll get up and sit on my legs, and I do move around quite a bit when I'm
on the situation. Like if you are relaxed with a client and it's a one-on-one and we want everybody to be relaxed, it's fine. It's just that if it gets into a more official setting where there's multiple cameras and maybe it's in lieu of a conference or something like that, it's really, again, knowing your audience, knowing the situation.
Right. Okay, so we did sort of distracting habits in a way, right? Where our hands, and some people are big hand talkers. I'll do it a little bit, but I don't do it too much, I don't think. And I think, another interesting point is sort of the monotone aspect of things. And I'm hyper aware of this now, because as president of the Rockland Business Women's Network, I'm charged with leading the meetings and making everybody feel welcome. And I want people to have an energy level. And now I'm doing my hands. I want people to feel a real positive energy, when they come into that room. I want them to feel like, wow, this is a place that I want to be. But I found, as I was, sort of leading up to this position, that I would tend to get sort of monotone in my talking, and I would be almost a little bit serious because I was making points, and I have forced myself to make sure that I'm in, you know, using different inflections, and sometimes I'll go low, and then I'll get, so it is a little bit of a challenge to make sure that you're not monotone, and especially if someone's using this for presentation. And Zoom is really wonderful for, you can set up easily a PowerPoint that you're going to show to one person or to 100 people. But being very careful, I think, about that in terms of your voice and your inflection, and keeping people interested with your voice, and your facial expressions as well is kind of important. So you're just not monotone, like, you know, even you would be in person, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a little bit of it's showtime involved in this because we're not in person with each other, and we're digesting this on a flat two-dimensional medium, whether it is our laptop or a monitor or a phone. And 50% of our energy can be cut down because of that. And we don't feel that kind of life force, that energy that we feel when we're really actually with people in person. So we do have to kind of up that energy, but not in a you want it to still be genuine. So
Right.
hopefully you're just coming across at the very least that you're happy to be there. You know, it would be crazy to have a grin or a smile on your face the whole time, because it's not going to make sense. It's kind of like a stew, you know, so there should be, in the open and the close, it's always a great time to smile and be, I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm glad that I was here with you. But within that, there might be some learning, there might be some serious things, there might be a whole slew of different spices and vegetables that would be in that soup. You know, so it has to be a combination of all of those things. But the main thing is that I think there has to be a congruency between your tone, your facial expression, your voice, your body language. Everything needs to be telling the same story, because if something is not connected, there's that weird kind of literal disconnect, because I'm like, you're telling me something's good, but you're not smiling. So what's wrong with this picture? And you're telling me that this should be helpful or solution oriented, but you don't seem that excited about it. So what am I to believe? So we need to match that. And one thing that I will always warn clients is, look, I can do a lot to help somebody, but I cannot change someone's personality. But what I can tell you, and when I work with people that are very introverted or a little bit more mild-mannered or just reserved, I will say to them, I guarantee that when you have something that has been wonderful that's happened in your life that you've wanted to share with family and friends, there is that part of you that has gotten passionate and enthusiastic about what you want to share with people. That's the part of your personality that everybody has that you need to try to find, to tap into in front of a camera or in a public speaking manner or whatever it may be. And let's face it, a lot of times people are thrown in public speaking events, thrown in front of the camera reluctantly. They don't want to be there. They're dreading it. They're procrastinating about it. They're having anxiety about it. I get it. Those are a lot of my clients. But on the whole, those are the things that we all want to try to work through, and then say to yourself, you know, I just need to live in like a 20-minute compartment here, right? So I may not be good at this all the time. I may be dreading this leading up to it, which hopefully you're not dying 1,000 deaths leading up to it, because that in itself can, you know, really hurt you. But just commit to, what do I need to do, and what do I need to try to apply in front of the camera for that 20 minutes that I can muster up and work on and get better at. And then by all means, please, always, if you can, make sure that whatever you're doing is recorded so that you can play it back and really watch yourself and be kind to yourself. Not so critical, but be kind enough to that you can get to the point where you can say, I am self-aware to where I know what I sound like. I know what I look like. I know how I communicate. I know how I come across, because then what happens? You get internal self-trust. And once you can trust yourself, of knowing that you're in good hands with yourself, with how you use all your communication tools, that is when then you can let go and stop worrying about yourself and only worry about, how can I be here to benefit others?
Yeah, that's all great. You know, years ago I had a seminar firm, a conference firm, where, and I'm not quite sure why I started that way back when I had no real experience, but I did anyway. And,
why not?
yeah, why not? And, you know, helping people run their businesses and just different topics. And it was with somebody else who had a little bit more experience than me. And the first thing that we did at our first seminar was record ourselves. And it was, I hate to admit it even, but it was back in the day when we had the cassette recorder and the buttons, and dating myself. But listening back to it was talk about invaluable. Every other word out of my mouth was okay, okay, you got that, okay, okay, let's move on. And it was painful, but what a good lesson. And yeah, recording yourself, even if you do it at home, you can do it on your phone, you can do it on your computer, record yourself giving a presentation. Yes. And then just play it back, and it's only you that has to listen to it, and you'll get a sense of you know, where you have those issues. I mean, it's funny, even the recording that I did for LinkedIn this week about this program, Insight Network, I did it, it took me a couple hours and I edited and whatever, and then I put it up on LinkedIn, and then I watched it back like a couple hours later. I was like, okay, like I was doing, so.
No, it's something that is very common. I just said it, you know, in there. It's part of our language, as long as it's not so repetitive that it becomes distracting. Right. So if I said, you know, 20 times, you'd start to notice it. And the ahs and ums, which are called verbal graffiti, really happen because we're afraid of just letting there be a moment of silence. So we should refrain from feeling compelled to have the answer right away, have the information right away, spit it out right on the ready, because that's not human. That's not normal. We should be able to pause, ponder, reflect, remember, grab information, and then continue. And 1 or 2 or 3 seconds when we're the presenter feels so long, but it doesn't feel like that on the receiving end. Right. And anything, when people take their time, studies show that it makes them seem more intelligent, more careful, more caring about what they want to bring across, rather than just blurting it out or being scripted, God forbid, right? And with canned answers or canned information. So get comfortable with those pauses. They can be hugely effective, and you can really use them to your advantage, but just don't be afraid of them. And once we find that place, the ahs and ums start happening less. And the ahs and ums also happen when we are trying to work out the information because we're not prepared enough. So the more prepared you are, the more that you know your stuff, the more that it's internalized rather than memorized, will help with those things too. And we also tend to speak faster when we're nervous, and that's understandable. That's a big knee-jerk reaction for people. And then there's other filler words like to be honest, clearly, actually is like a disease. When I coach a team of people, one person starts saying actually a lot, then everybody who gets up seems to start saying it's like potato chips. You can't have just one.
There are so many like that. At the end of the day, I use that at the end of the day all the time. Yeah, to be honest. Yeah.
To be honest is horrible, or to tell you the truth, because then that is in saying, well, were you not being honest a second ago? Or not always tell that. And again, those are just things that people feel like they want to be candid with somebody. So then say that, you know, to be candid with you, to be perfectly open with you, to confide in you, or to give you the whole, let me tell you the backstory, or let me give you the behind the scenes. Those are all meaning the same thing, but sound so much better than saying to be honest.
Right. So I am sure, and I would love to, if you'd love to, do a workshop when we can all get back together in person again, and do a workshop on body language, on public speaking. You know, the one that you mentioned earlier about slowing down your talking. It is amazing when you work with people that they don't realize how fast they're speaking. And when you ask them to slow down, they'll say, but that's so slow. And you're like, it's not really, it's coming across perfectly, you know? So yeah, just little tips and tricks like that can be so helpful. So maybe we'll schedule something. Yeah. After.
And I know we're wrapping up our time, and as I'm looking away, I'm looking at a couple of little things that I wanted to make sure that I wanted to just get in quickly. Always assume that your mic and your camera are on whenever you're in front of it. That's a really important one. And also active listening is really important too. So it's not just your facial expression when you're trying to express yourself, but we help other people know that we're 100% there with them, that we are digesting what they're telling us by actively listening and really making sure that we're saying, yes, I get it, or our eyebrows are happening, our smile, that we're reacting actively to what they're telling us. Because otherwise people may feel like, is it coming across okay? Do they get it? Am I making a connection here or not? So we help other people communicate while they're communicating with our facial expression and our active listening as well. And then one thing that I wanted to just bring up quickly is someone on LinkedIn had posted a video this week of the CEO of Marriott Marriott, who had gotten on and given a video, and people were really raving about this gentleman because they were saying that he was so genuine and so connecting and so heartfelt and so vulnerable. And I clicked on it right away because I wanted to see what they were talking about. And I knew right away that he was reading a teleprompter because this was scripted out and it's corporate and they had to. But even though I might have noticed that more than other people might have, because this is what I do and I train people for it, what made the difference for him was that he was emotionally invested the whole time. And he was trying hard to make sure that he was connecting on a human level and being genuine. And even though he was scripted, and even though he's reading a teleprompter, he was successful at it because he did come across vulnerable. He obviously had really not just been reading a script. He had really worked on this with somebody. He knew what his message was going to be. And that teleprompter was there just to make his life easier. But the main thing was that emotional investment, that human connection, and being really caring and genuine. That was what everybody was really resonating with everybody that was applauding him.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love that. I actually, one of my earliest jobs was, I love this, I worked in the film and television department of IBM.
Oh, okay.
Which was actually based in the basement of 1133 Westchester Avenue in White Plains. Okay. And wow, was that such an experience, because it was back in the day when I bought my first pinstripe suit. You know, I learned how to dress. They spent 2 days with us, how to answer the phone, 2 days, like what you could say and what you couldn't say.
Wow.
And then the CEO, and down in the studios, you could wear jeans. It was the only place, and that was long before Casual Friday.
Yes.
But they would come down and I got a chance to watch that process that you're talking about, where the CEO is coming in and the whole, again, positioning, lighting, looking, you know, how they were set up for success, and the teleprompter, and looking in and making that connection. So yeah, it's so important to really have your message come across as being sincere, because when it's not, it's so obvious, and then you just lose everybody right away. So
yeah, and just knowing who your audience, who are you trying to connect and why. I had worked with a CEO within our area that was just coming across stiff as a board in front of the camera, and he was doing these like once a week or once every 2 weeks. And finally I uncovered in working with him that he was running in because he had a lot on his plate, juggling 8 different things, would only run in at the last minute, glance at the script for just a moment, never really was able to have time to have the discussion of who are we trying to reach and why. So he would literally just get up there. This was another thing on his list, to read the script and get out as fast as possible. And I get it, because he had a lot of responsibility. But once I helped him make that connection of saying, you really need to know who are you talking to and what's the purpose, what are you trying to achieve through this message, it changed the whole thing for him. It was like his personality. It wasn't just another thing to check off a list for the day. And it was shocking, the change that was in this person as they started to communicate in a more genuine manner, really.
Yeah, so important. We didn't do hair and makeup and wardrobe tips, but I did notice as soon as we came on, as I said to you, that you looked a lot more matte and not shiny, and I was feeling a little shiny, even though I have my hourglass. I forget the name of this stuff. My daughter's the makeup queen, but it does help to have some sort of matting so you're not so shiny or whatever. And maybe we can do another one where we're talking about hair, because in a couple of weeks everybody's going to know everybody's real hair color. So
me too. Look at me too. But that's okay. If that's the least of our problems right now, we're in good shape. Yeah. So just quickly, a few just very quick things. Yes, you want to try to not be shiny, both men and women. For men, you can get a translucent powder that just takes the shine down, that doesn't add color to your face if you choose not to. That T-zone is really important. Watch what liquid foundation you're using, because that is inherently shiny. And then even when you put the powder on there, it will break through that. So you really want to load up on that powder right beforehand as much as you can. You want to bump up your lips and your eyes and your eyebrows. You want to make sure that you kind of do the hairspray, so that not only are you not getting the flyaways, but that it's not falling in your face for both men and women. I've had guys that have long hair and they're all commercial in front of the camera, and it's distracting, or it's hanging and it's causing weird funky shadows because the light can't hit your face fully. So those are some of the tips as far as that goes. And then for wardrobe, just solid, bright jewel tones always jump off the screen, always work better on every skin tone. I like to call them jelly bean colors, or
Oh,
two
that's good.
colors or rainbow colors, nice, solid, knowing what your color patterns are. Like I know that I'm a spring from years back. I know what colors work for me. But that's just rule of thumb on camera. Unless you have a great production crew and great lighting, sometimes then we can get away with very white, very dark colors, but usually it's a no-no if you're not. And tight patterns, stripes,
No strobing. All the
yeah,
strobing.
they
You
do
get
that
weird.
meringue thing,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
just busy. It'll look like someone puked all over the screen. I mean,
yeah,
one solid bright color, guess what's now the focus? Your face. And
yeah.
we shouldn't be distracted by anything else.
Yeah, and I want to say that I've heard more from the men being very worried about their hair than the women. And I think it's because women, we deal with this. Like
Every
we
day.
deal with, we couldn't get there, we had to get our hair done or our roots or we'll ponytail, we deal with this. The men I know are panicking. They're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I think that's kind of amusing. And I kind of like that the shoe's on the other foot for a
It
change.
is kind of amusing. And from a daughter of a father who I grew up with that was bald, and the women still found him very attractive. So I completely look at bald differently than most people because I saw that, never phased my dad, and the women seem to really like him very much. Make sure that when you're powdering, if you are receding hairline or a bald, you got to put that powder up on the high forehead, or on the top of that head as well, because that will shine and that can be very distracting in front of the camera.
Yeah, and I'm wearing a dewy. My makeup is Laura Mercier, and it's a dewy, and so that dewy is
great in person.
Yeah, it's better in person. It's a little.
But right now, actually, you don't look shiny right now. So.
All right, and everybody's lens is different. Everybody's camera is different. Its monitor is different. So you're going to do your best on yours, and then it might look different on somebody else's, but that's okay too. So before we wrap up, I do want to let people know that Patricia is available to come to your corporation when when we're able to do that again, or to do a Zoom workshop. I've actually got a couple of LinkedIn Zoom workshops set up with people where I can show them how to use their LinkedIn better through Zoom. So I'm happy to do that. But Patricia, tell them how they can get a hold of you.
Sure, absolutely. My email is patricia@patriciastark.com. Patricia@patriciastark.com. You miss an I, you're dead in the water. I've done it myself. You can also text me or call me at 845-596-1240. That's my work number, so it's fine to have that out there. Connect with me on social media. And then just also know that not only do I do in-person when that's possible, and Zoom and Skype, I also do a lot of phone training. I have a lot of clients that have a lot of communication fears or very advanced public speaking fears, dealing even with just interpersonal skills at work that I talk with on a weekly or bi-weekly basis just over the phone, and that is still very effective. So any number of those things. My training is very individualized for large groups, one-on-one individuals. It doesn't matter. We find a way to make it work for anyone in those situations. And I was recently certified as an executive coach as well. So anything that deals with communication skills, confidence, goals, thinking the right thoughts. It was through the positive psychology CPEC training program out of Atlanta. So all of these things interlap. So, basically our communication skills start with how we're communicating to ourselves internally. So it's the story you're telling yourself. What am I saying to myself, about the situation, about what's about to happen, about how other people are perceiving me? It all starts from within. So that's where we can start. There's always some psychology involved in that for everybody. And these fears are normal. These fears are something that we all share in common that make us human. I was talking to my husband the other day. We went out for a walk and we were trying to avoid people. And I said, this is excruciating for me. I grew up really shy and really afraid of my own shadow. And I used to be afraid of people. And then I grew up and I was lucky enough to get a career and my company where I end up loving as many people in front of me and as big of an audience as possible. And then I said, oh my God, and now I'm back down to being afraid of people again because of what's happening. Obviously, I was making a little bit of a joke, but it really hit me hard where I was like, the very thing that I love to do, I can't do right now.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I come from that person that was terrified to communicate when I was in middle school into high school. So I've never forgotten that. And that's the foundation for everything that I do.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point, that it comes from within first. And your website, Confidence, is CALM FIDENCE.com. And I think that's just a wonderful testament to exactly what you're saying. So before we go, I have to do the selfie. The attempt to do the selfie with you. So, all right, you ready? It's gonna be weird, but
Are you playing this back on your you're playing it back on FaceTime, right?
it'll be on Facebook permanently, so
Facebook,
people can
yes.
come back and refer to it, and if there's any questions in there, we'll try and answer them as well.
Right.
But
You can take a good screenshot of the two boxes next to each other. I always do that too.
I can, but then I can't move the camera.
No, I mean after on the playback.
Yes. Oh, good point. Oh, that's a good point.
That's usually how I grab it. Yes. And then just go back to what you said. So my website is patriciastark.com or columnfinance.com. Like you said, CALM. And the reason I trademarked that was because that was what most of my clients were seeking. Not just confidence, but that calm, that inner calm, and that being able to think straight and, feel like, again, you got this, you can do this. And that's how I ended up trademarking the Confidence name as well.
Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me and with everybody else. This is a challenging time, as we said in the beginning, and it's a time when, a lot of the things that we are comfortable with are being challenged, and we've got a whole lot to deal with. It's not just one thing, it's multiple things, and hopefully this won't be too long, and hopefully we can go back to our, regularly scheduled lives, if you will, but maybe having learned new skills along the way. And maybe, opportunities to do things that we, have been putting off or not been able to do. So, I'm hearing some positive things from people in terms of that, personally, how they're doing things that they weren't able to do, things with their kids. And so,
thinking about priorities and what's really important and all of those things. And I do also wish that this time is short. And I thank you for the gift today of forgetting for a little while, because we all have our stresses and anxieties with this, and it felt so good to have this break today to talk about the things that I love with you and the work that is so important and meaningful to me, and to forget for a little while. But with that being said, I wish everyone good health and safety, and God bless everyone out there watching, that we will get through this, and we will come out hopefully better on the other side. So thank you for who was ever watching today, and I really wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you, and we'll have a big coming out party when this is.
Your lips to God's ears, absolutely. Thank you so much, Risa, for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you everyone for watching, and be well.